नहीं करना पड़ेगा बिकॉज चाय नहीं आई तुम्हारी अभी तक.
Hello, good evening, sir. Vinay this side. Sir, as you know, I am the co-admin of this platform. We apologize that it seems like Jagdish sir network got disconnected, maybe because of some technical issue. I hope he will be joining back very soon.
Guys, as soon as we went live, I lost my connection. Hey, so let's start anyway. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. So depending on which part of the world you are joining from, welcome to this Gudi Padwa Indian New Year edition of ClarITea Chat. This is the 43rd episode of ClarITea Chat, and thank you all for attending this, or even watching the recordings. And that's an encouragement you are giving us from all over the world to keep us going week after week. My bad for my phone network going off immediately afterwards. I'm actually in Mumbai right now, connecting from my hotspot. But yeah, I mean, let's not hold ourselves back from coming back into action. So welcome Neel to this edition of ClarITea Chat.
Thank you, Jagdish.
Where's your cup?
Yes.
Okay. So guys, today we have with us Neel, or his formal name is Nilmadhab Mandal. He's the global data science lead at Mondelēz International, based in England. He was earlier with Saas. In fact, a lot of us who know him probably know him because of his engagement and evangelization during the Saas days, right? So Mondelēz, the name may not sound familiar, but the brands they make are very familiar to us. It's the largest snack company in the world, and they are the producers of Cadbury's, which meetha ho jaye. Even Bonvita, I think we all grew up on
Yeah.
Bonvita
Yeah.
with milk,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
more than we had it with our milk, we loved eating it. And of course, the latest rage among kids, and which is leading to a lot of milkshakes and other stuff, is Oreo. So they sell in 150 countries with about $26 billion turnover. So I'm sure that's lots and lots and lots of data that Neel is being challenged every day. Neel and his team are being challenged every day to crunch it, for getting insights. So Neel, welcome to this session. Now let me,
Thank you. My pleasure.
yeah. Now let me give a small introduction of Neel. So Neel rose from very humble beginnings. He'll talk about it. He hails from a farmer family in Bardhaman. The facilities were not good, so his mother sent him to a hostel. Uh, many years there. He has almost 20 plus years of experience, ranging from IIM. Yes, he worked at IIM, not just studied or did research. IRI, Kantar, TNS, SAS, and IDC before joining Mondelēz about 2.5 years back as a global data science lead. And having worked on both sides of the table, I think that's an enormous amount of experience that he carries. So thanks, Neel. So our chat with Neel will cover how we solve marketing problems with data science. He has built some products. He has solution challenging requirements from customers as part of Saas, where he was part of the customer success. And I think, and that's where, not I think, that's where we first met. Okay.
All right.
And then he jumped on to the other side of the fence to be a customer and a data transformer himself. So we will discuss, his insights about the balance between technology and domain, insights from both sides of the fence, and how analytics leaders and organizations are different from, okay, let me not call them laggards, but not the leaders. Okay. And as always, as we come towards the fag end of the chat, we will be doing a rapid fire round and then a reverse question to me. So, Neel, before we start talking of some serious things, let's get some energy revving up and going. Okay. So, let's start with recounting your experience with me and my team. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, thank you, Jagdish, for the opportunity. And indeed, yeah, I mean, how can I forget? We had almost 2.5 hours journey back in 2010, almost 10 years before. Yeah. And yeah, uh, thank you for the opportunity. And I still remember your vision for Tata Motors at the time and where you want them to go. So, and I remember I took certain calculated risk sometimes again going against the short term gain but looking with a long term value that we could both gain. And I'll possibly share that sometime if we have time in detail. But yeah, exciting journey. And again, I must say that you were one of those initial visionaries from those in so far as manufacturing kind of an organization are concerned, because in that sense 10 years 12 years before in India, analytics was not the buzzword in the manufacturing company. You were one of them. And still remember some of those interesting insights. If you remember, we had that Prithupak Sad issue where how you got that insights into the modeling and how we improved our modeling output with the domain. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, that was I remember that. So Neel was struggling with some dips in data which were not explained, and it was not in the same part of the year. And they were doing a forecasting module for us. The POC was for forecasting, and uh, and I think when we looked at the data, we said, hey, you know what? There is a Shraddh period when people postpone their purchases, And the Shraddh period, because it happens as per the Hindu calendar, it basically, shifts around the year. So you won't find a pattern unless you look at the, Indian calendar as such. And I think now that was like, the improvisation that we were doing. And I think that's the domain part of it, which Neel will talk later. Okay. So,
Absolutely.
thanks, Neel, for sharing that and for those kind words. They are always flattering. Uh,
Not
so,
really. Yeah.
but this chat is about you. So Neel's philosophy is setting the right expectations. I mean, engage, evolve, and build a feedback loop. To improvise your data science journey, and this should be a key takeaway for our audience. And I agree with that. So we will keep getting deeper insights as we go forward. Now, in our audience, as we go back and check, hey, who's watching ClarITea Chat, we find CXOs, founders, IT managers, and technology industry folks in our audience. This is definitely not a Bollywood show. So we have hardcore professionals here, and we try to add a lot of value to all of you. And what's that value? The common agenda that we all come here with is how to succeed with technology. There's enough technology, but we still have almost 80+% of the technology initiatives which are not succeeding in delivering ROI. I mean, you go live, but yeah, are you able to move the needle of business results? That's where the problem is, and that's what we are trying to solve by these kind of informal chats with our leaders. So let us see who all are here. So we have Sandeep Batra. He joins from Germany. I think while we are having tea, he might be having his lunch here. We have Nitin from Bangalore. Hi, Nitin. Hi, David. Um, Thanks for joining us. Maybe tell us where you're joining from. We have Sunil Punjabi. Hey, Sunil, good to see you in ClarITea Chats. I hope you're feeling better. Then we have Shri Vallabh Kulkarni joining us from Chennai. Thanks, Shri. And here is the LinkedIn user looking forward to hear from my old friend. I suspect this is Vijay Sethi. Do you know Vijay, Neel?
Of course, hero.
Ah, yes. So I don't know. We have some problem. I think it's his privacy setting on LinkedIn that he comes across as LinkedIn user. But I know he attends all of our ClarITea chats and keeps his encouragement coming. So we have Miraj here joining us from Bangalore. We have Dattatreya from Muscat. He is a regular on the ClarITea chat. And wow, we have Sarah Hanks. So good to see you here, Sarah. Yes, this is this today's show is about data science, and Sarah Hanks led data science at G Transportation and Webtech while I was there, and we've had some nice conversations about it. So please keep coming in, folks, with your comments on LinkedIn. Do share your name and where you're joining from on your LinkedIn or YouTube comments. Okay, so let's begin the session, Neel. Let's start grilling you. In the first part, let's try to look at your journey. So let's begin with a quick, 2-3 minute recap of your childhood
Mhm.
and right up to your first job.
Yeah, indeed. And as you give a brief intro, Jagdish, I think I'm very proud of my kind of an humble background. I've been um, coming from interior village in India, and I think from there on, I've been to the boarding school. So I was fortunate enough to grab some government scholarship and go into one of those best schools in that part of the country. And from there I have done my graduation in economics and statistics and mathematics, and then I kind of moved to a MBA as an marketing. And then during my during my work, I top it up with a supply chain advanced program, just to be sure that I understand the business perspective, and that's what I um, bring to table, and that's what I enjoy doing most. Yeah, I presently live in England, UK. Came here 6 years before, never thought of, but it just happened that way. I live with my wife here, who works for the charity in my local village here, and my daughter goes to a local school here. So yeah, we are a
Oh, that's
small
great.
good family, and look forward for the interaction with all of you.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, Neel, now give us a a few minutes overview of your career. The companies, the roles, and one highlight and learning from each of those roles to tell our audience that, hey, what did you gain in that particular role and how it built up to your next one.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, indeed. I mean, I started with after my graduation MBA. I've started with kind of an academic research, and I ended up I'm Ahmedabad as a research associate. So I used to support in their academic research. As you know, their research are really high quality. So I got an opportunity to look from a very close corner, in terms of the academic excellence, so far as management studies are concerned, the research excellence, the commitment from the faculty and from the students. So I have seen people taking exams midnight, literally exams at midnight, pen and paper exams. That shows the commitment from the faculty and of the students. No question asked. Nobody even, nobody even asked question why I'm giving it. And why I'm writing my answers at midnight. And management in that sense is not a part-time job. I'm not saying don't mix up your life and work balance, but I think early on you need to understand you are taking a responsibility. So that's the way I
So
think management is different. Yeah.
that's a good takeaway from an institute which is, I think, worth every letter in its name because of that commitment, right? And that's setting that standard. Yeah, let's move on. Yeah, Neil.
Yeah. So then I joined corporate from academics, quote unquote corporate. But that was an extension for me because I was into, moving into a kind of an research in the market intelligence and marketing intelligence space. So organization called IRI for their Bangalore operation and supporting kind of an consumer goods brands in US. One thing stood out there. I got an excellent leader, and he's no more, unfortunately. My country manager, an excellent manager called Santanu Deshpande. I still remember when I entered his house on day one, his office on day one. The first thing he told Neel, I came to know that you are pursuing some higher studies. I want you to ensure that you complete it and don't get bogged down by the corporate pressure. I have not found another leader who think of employees in that fashion and give that assurance on day one. So leaders think beyond uh, beyond corporate and think their team fast. That's one lesson. From there, move to again another market intelligence provider called Cantor. Earlier, it used to be called TNS, and that's the first time I got a great opportunity to build a product from grounds up. And I think that's an overreaching responsibility because for the first time I was working on the back end or on the upstream side, Java coder and database provider. At the same time, I was working with at the the downstream, working with the end customers directly face to face, and I was in the middle. So that was a big learning of how to collaborate and build a product upstream which meets the business requirement. And yeah, and then the break came in SaaS.
I think product manager is a pretty sweet spot because you're actually looking at the entire business requirements or the customer requirements, as well as you're very very deeply engaged with the technology folks, and you're trying to be the man in the middle who's trying to prioritize everything and make the most of your development capacity, isn't it?
Absolutely. Indeed.
Uh,
Indeed. Indeed. Yeah.
That's
So then Saas came. I mean, of course, I was in kind of a data science, and Saas is a kind of a de facto leader, at least on those days, and even a great leader today. So in SaaS, that's where I think I spent a decade with SaaS and got an excellent opportunity to work in India and here. Met one of the best minds, including the other of yours, Jagdish. That's where we started working. And if I can take a bit of pride in saying that within SaaS, I took the opportunity. There was an opportunity to introduce analytics, data science in an industry which is so far not well known, which is manufacturing consumer goods. And I got the opportunity to drive that space and drive analytics adoption amongst those companies. And I think it allowed me to meet some of the best of the minds and the bright minds in Indian manufacturing consumer goods sector. So that is a humbling experience, I must say.
sure.
Yeah, and briefly spent with the IRI. I think there was pure play consulting companies. There in the kind of an analyst form, so to say. And again, after spending a decade with SaaS, I could get an opportunity to go beyond technology and think holistic about process and people. And I think that culminated into my present role when I'm on the other side of the table in Mondelēz, where I mostly work on the process and the intersection of people, process, and technology. And that's indeed a big, I would say, learning for me, because you see from a different lens altogether when you're on the other side of the table.
Yeah. So, Neel, I think that's a very good segue into my next question, which is, you spent a lot of time on the technology side, on with SaaS, and they, I think, did a phenomenal job in the whole promoting the whole field of data science and creating business successes out of it. Of course, you know technology has changed a lot. The open
Yeah,
source and cloud and all have
yeah,
taken
yeah.
over by a storm. But I think let's focus on your experiences and learnings. So, having spent almost 2 decades with on the selling side, then as you come to Mondelēz
Mhm.
on the buyer side or on the enterprise side,
Yeah,
um, what are the differences? What is the difference in experience? So, what are the similarities and what are the differences that you see between the two? So tell us a few stories, that make our audience understand
yeah,
from a sort of seller and from a buyer point of view.
absolutely. I think one thing is unchanged, and that's technology. I mean, in fact, we are talking here today because the technology today enables to do the magic which was 20 years before unthinkable, right? So that's data science, that's the computation power increase, and the big data, and the whole revolution around it. What is different? Clearly, putting technology at I would say putting process and people along with technology. Uh, I do not want to evaluate which one is more important or less important, but the matter of fact is technology is available, but only as per your research, 13% of the technology projects or the 13% of the organization gets benefit of it. So couple of things that I could see the difference. When I was on the technology provider side, clearly many a times I've heard people saying, "Hey, I have a lot of data. What can I do for it? Do with it?" That's a good question. I'm not undermining that, but that clearly shows that the question didn't start from the fact that I have these business challenges and how could I apply data. So data and data science is a means rather than a goal. um, that part is very different in Mondelez today, and I think that should be a starting point for most of the business. uh, it must start and ground itself with the business challenges they have in hand. So today, when most of my time is to find the low hanging fruits, to of course apply technology, but then go couple of step ahead of it. So if we have this technology, what would be the process changes, what are the people adoption KPIs that we are going to gain business benefit out of. So when I look things more holistically, if I have to advise and go back to the other side of the table, I would say I will start with this trial, and all of them will be equally important today for me. This can't hear you.
Okay, I was on mute. Sorry.
Yes,
I was saying that, for a few minutes, I gave you the limelight, and you must be wondering where is Jagdish Khan.
No, that's all right. Yeah, no, thank you. I know you're there.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important, because many a times, and I'm sure you would have faced it, Neel, that as you were trying to make a difference, from a technology seller point of view, you would be wondering, why the organization is moving very slow. What's the problem? Here is the solution. Why? There were many things that you wouldn't be able to figure out, which I think you can figure out today, that there are people and their processes and their mindsets. And in fact, I must share with you that one of the mindsets is, data being a sort of property, right? People hold the data, and people have been taking decisions in a certain way, and they sometimes feel insecure about handing over that part to technology, right? So, but that's an interesting one, that people and process are sometimes more important from a transformation point of view. That is one takeaway that I see here. And the second takeaway is, don't start from that I have a lot of data, what do I do with it? Let me bring in some technology. It is like, what is the problems we have? When we look at our hotspots of challenges and problems, and how do I basically bring data-driven, problem solving to it, and then I go finding, where the data is being captured or not being captured, and that's that's how sort of data-driven transformation happens. So let me share one story with you, and which kind of just aligns with the point that we are trying to make. So our folks were trying to. So the problem statement was that they wanted to increase the rural finance penetration of these. We are bringing out these small trucks, right? 1 ton, sub 1 ton trucks like Tata Ace and the smaller brother of Ace. And these and we wanted to really go down to the local financing sources and routes, like the cooperative societies and all of that. And we also wanted to figure out that, hey, who's financing what? So I think the first point is to start from there. Who's financing our vehicles? And, we had our, so as, this problem I discussed with our vehicle finance people, I went back to the CRM and I said that, listen, where's this data? And then we found that, at the order level, we were capturing a financer, and it had the top 10 financiers and it had a other. Okay. And if you choose other, then you write the name of the financiers. So we actually, took a data dump of all those other and then put a small team to clean up that data. And we figured out like thousands and thousands of entries out there. And then we realized, oh my God, there has to be a better way of capturing the financial data if we really want to do something. So we actually changed the design of our OLTP system, of the CRM OLTP system, where we started capturing a financier as an entity. Okay, and if there's a new financier, you first create the financier as an entity or as an account, as a business account, and then you tag to it. And of course, then you have to consolidate. So these financiers would have a two-level aggregation. So let's say a bank, a lot of branches of the bank which are coming in, these they will have some sort of an aggregation to a particular bank.
Mhm.
And it took a few months, okay, but I think the moment they started getting this data, they started actually reaching out to these people who are not having arrangements, those formal arrangements, financing arrangements with us, and they started setting up those relationships, and I think this penetration of rural finance penetration actually increased from something like 20+% to 40+%. And this was all driven by, of course, data, but it was like putting the problem statement first.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I just remembered this story when you said, don't start with data, start with the business problem.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And to be very honest, just to quickly compliment, that's the problem at the data science end itself. We data scientists are so much into our small world of creating our best code, and which is extremely important. Of course, I'm not saying it, but then we sometimes lose the oversight of the business, and we tend to forget that relatively simpler effective model is much more important for business than the most complex model, which is difficult to implement and take hours to run. So that's the balance
Yeah,
I think we need to bring.
yeah. So, Neel, let me come to my next question, which is again, something similar to the story I narrated, which is, um, I remember when we were initially talking, you said that the biggest challenge to data science is data itself. Now, now, could you elaborate it and let our audience know a few instances, to better understand this complexity, and also decode with a few examples as to how data science is different from analytics. Many times we tend to use these interchangeably. So, yeah, just a few things there. Thoughts from you?
Sure. No, I mean, you have two questions, so I will take one by one. Yeah, indeed. I mean, and data science works extremely well when we have complexity of a business problem and we have rich data. Now, is when I have seen 10 years, 12 years before, when the so-called ERP systems was built, they were built not keeping in mind the end use. Of course not, because nobody could imagine, at the nascent stage of the ERP system, the data science will come after 20 years or 30 years. So some of the way data is captured are very different the way data science need it. So for example, you build an ERP system to optimize the storage, for example, or even to optimize maximum the querying of the reporting query. But data science need a 360-degree view. So many of the things are either not usable, or you need to kind of transform the data. So there are hundreds of anecdotes of that. A couple of them would be, for example, many data points are not in the ERP system. So when we were forecasting energy companies forecast for the every 15 minutes for the day ahead. So it was on 96 points, because every 15 minutes, and four times in an hour and 24 hours and a day ahead. We realized that a lot of energy consumption for Mumbai is depending on weather, and not only weather like temperature or humidity, but kind of an derived weather quotient like feel like temperature. A feel like temperature is extremely important. So we actually took feed from the live weather stations that they've built, which is not part of ERP. Um, Even today, some of those so-called event-based analytics, that's a kind of an important term nowadays, event-based analytics. So things like the Shroud example that you have given, or when I was working with another automotive companies based in the capital region, NCR region, we realized the similar thing. Certain year there is a huge spike on the automotive passenger car sales, we couldn't make out why. And then we go back and realize that that year, government of India actually released a lot of ex gratia lump sum amount to the government employees. So because it's an NCR region, there's a huge spike in the demand. So
Wow.
those insights or those things you will not get in the ERP system. And leave aside those insights, even today 90% of the organization do not have, let's say, marketing spend in an ERP system. They are possibly somewhere in the Excel sheets or email and stuff like that. So it's always a challenge, long story short. And data scientists, as we famously say, in a data science, a life in a day of a data scientist, 80% is data massaging, data cleansing, and then 20%, if you're lucky, is actual modeling. Yeah. So we need to be we are in a mundane mundane job, though it looks kind of very colorful. Now coming back to how we could improve it, I think more and more when we see today's data lake or concept like lake house, they are being built in. They are keeping the end users in mind, and we are the end users. Data scientists are the end users of the databases or the data lakes. So that part is, I think, slowly improving, but is a long way to go. Yeah. And then I'm talking about only structured data. There is an 80% of the data that is unstructured space, so that's something. Anyway, some of the there's only few people use it, and then besides the business transactional data, there is today the Internet of Things. The machines are creating data every second, and in really in zettabyte scale. So that data, very few people are using it. Sometimes it's in the proprietary, so they are not shareable across vendors, and that's the biggest problem. As you started with, it is their own individual property. So those are the things, I think, if we can open up and create that environment which is congenial to the data science, and I think slowly we are moving in that state.
Yeah, no. So I think some really good takeaways there, Neel. So the difference between the ERP at one end and data science at the other end is that you require much more data points there. There are data points that are not being captured in your system, so you need to figure out where to get them. And somewhere in the beginning, I mentioned that we were talking about continuously improving your models. Like for example, here too. So I think next time you probably have to watch out for the news of any government hikes coming in, or and all of that, and then somewhere feed it into the model. Now I don't know how you feed a news into your model, but I'm sure there's a way to do that. But yeah, there are external data attributes that you need to pull in, and sometimes a date and a calendar is not enough. Sometimes you need to map. Sometimes you need to map multiple calendars. Like in our case of forecasting, you had to map the Indian calendar. And today we have the Indian New Year, and which keeps changing. And in fact, actually, this is true that today a lot of big assets get purchased, and a lot of these marketers actually have these Gudi Padwa offers.
Yeah.
Okay? Even to purchase a house or to jewelry and all.
Yeah.
And I don't think it happens on the same day every year.
No, it's changing. Yeah. I mean, Western calendars. Yeah. Western calendars are still stable except Easter, but the Indian calendars and Indian context, that's one of the things, I'm sure you have found it when you deploy your data science base table, the Indian context or possibly any country's context are extremely different than the context where the ERPs are built.
So you need an extra data point set, which is like the Indian calendar, and then and then either those periods or those specific dates on which the purchases happen, and then you start planning around it. Okay, so that's interesting. So let me ask a follow-up question, Neel, here. So when you are talking, so you said that 80% of the data driven transformation is around the massaging of the data, right? But when you start on your journey, right? So um, what is the starting point? How do you know that whether you have the right data, whether you have sufficient data for the modeling, whether your base systems require any changes?
Yep.
So yeah, tell us a little bit more about what I think you only mentioned something called data audit, right?
Indeed. I mean, yeah. Uh, it's always a kind of an chicken and egg problem. You never start with a completeness of the data. It's an incremental journey, but at the same time, you need to have certain minimum data points. And when I started my career, we mostly work with the so-called statistical kind of a model, econometrics model. In my college days, I read, and those, as a rule of thumb, we used to say 30 data points is good enough. And today's machine learning and the AI models are data guzzlers. They guzzle the data, and you need to create, thousands and thousands of data points minimum to make a stable machine learning model. I'm talking about minimum. Um, it could run into possibly millions of data points for a stable, and you need to then test the data science model. You build a data science model, you test it, and you deploy it. These three kind of a segmentation of the statistical model, data science model, is extremely important, because you do not want to um, build and test on the same data. That would be kind of an sacrilege, or kind of an sin, so to say. Yeah. um, Now, coming back to your original question of how, in terms of a data audit, could help. I think one of the ways to do it is building certain kind of an gatekeeper kind of thing. So when you talk about product model development, that's kind of easier, because you are there to evaluate and kind of and do a data audit and create a data report, and you know sense check with business. The challenge comes when you deploy it, because you want to automate it, right? With deployment, you do not expect a modeler or a data scientist to really monitor and check. That will be too time consuming, and you do not have the luxury, because the model need to be refreshed. Maybe you have 3 hours of running window. So that's where you need to bring that kind of an rigor into your data checking mechanism. So there must be an alert management. So for example, when we worked or implemented something, if an outlier comes, there is an alert management, and then kind of a rectification mechanism. So the outlier is capped immediately by the algorithm, but at the same time, an alert is generated by, hey, this is a marketing spend which looks like unusually high, and what do you do with that? Yeah. So those are the things that we need to be very careful for business confidence in your model. Otherwise, you possibly build the best model, but in one cycle or two cycles, just a couple of outliers could completely destroy the confidence of the business on your model. And those are the things we are watchful about.
Yeah. And I think right in this initial stages, maybe how about managing the expectations of the business people in terms of how fast they can get results?
Yeah, indeed. So expectation management is good thing, and often we under the business pressure that you all work under, and sometimes getting the good thing early is always a business temptation, but uh, building the right data is extremely important. I was just going through a few months before an article by Andrew Ng. Andrew Ng is the MIT professor who is the machine learning kind of AI expert, the whole gradient kind of a concept that he brought into. And he was saying everybody in the data science world are squeezing the algorithm. Nobody is talking about the data. Nobody is investing on the data. People have a lethargy of investing on the data because you do not get the immediate benefit. Business do not understand that if I spend 100 whatever 100K in and data in augmenting the database. What is the result? And that will take time, and there is no way you can prove it immediately. But that's where the smart people are doing. They are getting the 360 view of the data on which analytics or data science thrive.
Yeah. So can you take an example of like of or a case study from your experience, where this expectation management and dissonance was managed by you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The dissonance is the right word, actually. Yeah, indeed. So, um, I mean, I remember even in my in my previous role or in my existing role, multiple times um, we started with the business challenges. We prioritize the business challenges, and after we prioritize the business challenges, we did the data audit. There are multiple competing use cases for data science and analytics. When we do the data audit, that helps us to prioritize that what is realizable in terms of the data science model. So I possibly could have the highest ROI for one particular use case, but if the organization data is not matured on that particular area, I can't help much. So
No, so Neil, let me, sorry. I mean, what I was expecting is a slightly different. So let me rephrase
mhm,
my question. Okay? So, generally people expect, results from analytics and data science from day one. Okay.
yeah,
But, what we were discussing is that, refining the data sources, understanding like, the outliers, which will appear out of nowhere, etc., etc. While you will do a data audit, but they will still come in, right?
yeah,
As you are going through your journey. And you will kind of continuously be managing those new surprises. So it takes time to evolve these models, right?
that's right.
So the point is like, how do you bridge this expectation gap? Okay. So I'm specifically looking for, a case study, where you're talking about something called a middle out process.
Yeah, indeed. No, I mean,
So, yeah.
yeah,
So
I was going there, and yeah, absolutely.
okay.
So, as I said, several of them, and one of the most prominent comes to my mind is, one of India's biggest or Asia's biggest, interior exterior painting company, right? So you treated them as a consumer goods because you get it in a tub or a or a kind of.
I think everyone has guessed by now who it is, right?
Yeah, and they're extremely well known in the IT market for their maturity, right? Now, when we started talking with them, um, they had an incumbent system for 20 years, and everybody from their top management to their demand planner are trained on the system. They wanted to go for the next generation technology. um, we when we came into the picture, we have been told, can you give a 5% improvement? And we are like, okay, that's a good aspiration, but we need to evaluate your model, we need to evaluate your data at what stage it is. And I still remember we end up doing a pilot, a very very rigorous and kind of an focused pilot for almost 3-4 months, and found out that we could get an accuracy in the pilot below 1%. Now, um, interestingly, interestingly, the organization was matured enough and was kind of an has the foresight when we painted the picture that what other data points you can bring in. So you can bring in your some of your transactional data, which they already have, but additional data from the stores. They have experience stores, like you can go and see and do things there. So lots of CRM data, so to say. They had the marketing promotion data. They have real time or close to real time transportation and inventory data. When we got all of them, when we painted that picture and how that's going to benefit, and thankfully to their management, they could foresee that what best of the breed data science technology could do when they have the data. So this kind of an example help us to go through the cases. As I said, they started with 5%, and they actually when they implemented it, they were close to what they wanted to do. just with the help of bigger data. I can't stop saying one more that comes to my mind now. And again, going back to the energy forecasting companies, and that's the real one. That sounds crazy, but that's a real one. Um, we were forecasting every 15 minutes, as I told you, for the energy provider. And we realized every time around 8 p.m., either 7:30 or 8 p.m., that slot. So there are two slots of 15-minute slots that we are forecasting. There is a huge spike in the energy consumption. Okay. None of us could guess. And I'm sure even I asked the audience, they won't be able to guess, because I'm talking about 10, 12 years before, when at that point of time, the prime time in India television, and there was a very popular soap operas used to come, the so-called, Saas ki Kabhi Bahu thi and those Ekta Kapoor things. And that was an insight that we missed. So someone actually spotted it, one of our team members, not me, one of our team members. So that shows what data could do. And in an energy forecasting, because there's a penalty involved from the energy regulator, even 0.5%, 0.2% here and there accuracy makes a lot of money, or cost you a lot of money. So we saved a couple of points of accuracy there just with that insight.
No, this is awesome. And I think, this is again, where data alone cannot tell you something. You've got to bring in some business insight, right? I mean, as we call the domain, right? You need to bring the domain and data together to be able to generate some insights. Okay, so Neel, we are just 10 minutes away from the close time. Generally, these chats are so interesting that we lose sense of time, and our audience are very generous. They remain with us, for the rapid fire and the reverse question. But before I go forward and maybe in a little faster way, let me bring in some comments from our audience and maybe a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So right in the beginning, we had asked people to share where they're joining from. So we had some responses. Sandeep joining us from Mumbai, Gibson joining us from Bangalore. We had Logesh saying hi. And we had Mayank Bedi from Bangalore. So Mayank was on ClarITea Chat as a guest some time back. And yes, indeed, the LinkedIn user, the secret LinkedIn user is Vijay Sethi. And we have Navneet Singh here. We have Sina from Bristol, UK. Hey, thanks, Sina, for joining. Looks like you must be connected to Neel in some way. And then we have, Sandeep sharing a few good words, and Ankush giving his regards. Hi, Ankush. Okay, so now comes the question for you. It's a long one, so don't get scared, Neel. This is Neel. Can you share your perspective on your approach for obtaining domain knowledge for problem solving where prior exposure does not exist? And some of the challenges in last mile delivery of data science outcomes once solution has been found, and how have you overcome that?
So two questions, correct? This one is how to gain. Can you repeat the first one? How to gain insights?
You should be able to see them on the screen. It says your approach to obtaining domain knowledge for problem solving where prior exposure does not exist.
Yeah. And that's an interesting one. So, there is no silver bullet, but the way I would approach it, your data science model anyway will tell you whether you are explaining the variation in the data. So there are certain, statistical benchmarks where it says a good model or a bad model. The moment you see that's not the good model or a model not up to your expectation, you need to find either that your data is not complete, that means your hypothesis is not complete, there must be you're losing something that explains the variation, or your data is not quality wise good. So this could be top reasons for that. Now how you do it where you do not have a domain expert, I think, as I said, talk to business. We are here to enable business, and possibly with no data science project, is successful, and I have seen that 13% successful, I'm very sure organization in your research like this, all of them must be starting with business. So talk to business, try to understand what is the nuances. Even if you have not started with that, at least when you find that your model is not coming up, talk to business, find more data, find more insights. That's the only way, because there is no other rocket science, so to say, or a silver bullet to fix that. Yeah.
I do see a small nuance here, Neel. I think Miraj, I do see in that question somewhere a hesitation to reach out to those guys, because many times these relationships between your teams, the solution teams and the business teams is more transactional. That hey, I give you this problem, you give me the solution, and you can't find the solution. I know you are hesitating to go back to them and saying that hey, I don't have a solution, or like my solution is not perfect, but can you tell me from a domain? And see, let's not use big words like domain expertise. It's simple, business expertise. What you're looking for is business expertise, and that's coming from your own people whose problems you're solving, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so the next question was some of the challenges in last mile delivery of data science outcomes.
Yeah.
So once you have the models, the results are coming, then how do you make people use those models?
Absolutely. So there are two aspects of last mile delivery. One is the technology aspect, deployment aspect. I think that's relatively easier. Nowadays, you have real-time solutions and stuff like that. So that should not be a challenge anymore. The other part is the business adoption problem, how business make use of it. And that's where I started with. Every data science solution has to be a business project, not an IT project. I know is easier said than done. I'll give you an example. I have seen drastically different outcome when in a project you have someone from business part-time participating in your data science project. Okay, so that's one. Scenario two, I have seen even in my organization, we have a crack team where we take full-time project team recruiting from business. So the business guy will come full-time, sit in the project, will help me to understand the business, and will help business to understand my perspective full-time. That gives a very different outcome in my experience, because then you get a people who thinks through your lens, and adoption and stuff like that is related to if someone empathize with the business. People talk about business empathy in data science. It's so important because business has no clue, most of them, what is going on, and data scientists most of the time do not understand the challenges the business have. We will talk about some of the explainability part of it, but this I will.
So Neel, I mean, I just want to bring in, somebody. So Sarah Hanks, earlier had pinged us that she's there, and she said good evening. So Sarah, if you're still around, maybe can you just put in some comments about your experience? Because okay, so here is something I want to tell you. So we had this DNA team. We used to call it data and analytics team.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah was our customer, and so Sarah is like the business. So she is she led that entire analytics team within business, and these were like people who were actually coming from the different business functions, and working very closely with us. So they were like the analysts within the respective business functions. So maybe like Sarah, if you are still there watching it, maybe give us some view on how do you involve the business guys more closely in making sure that the models get used, in deploying those, looking at their effectiveness, and doing that entire value realization part of it. So I'll look forward to her comments, but meanwhile let's move on. Neel, we'll probably go a little bit more, so I hope your lunch is not waiting for you.
That's fine.
Yeah. So Neel, let me make this into a quick fire one. Okay. So tell me three differences between analytics leaders and not so good leaders. And I'm like looking at your experience ranging into like dealing with a number of businesses in your SaaS experience, where you saw that some people are really like running with it and realizing value, and some people were struggling with it even though they bought the technology.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Make it quick fire.
Yeah, bullet point. Get the buy-in of your project at the highest order. Get it top down. The buy-in there, because invariably there is a process change for each data science project. There is an adoption issue or adoption requirement for each data science issue. So start from the top. Always the successful organization start from the top. Second, start from a business case. I cannot tell it more. Start from a business case. Show the value quickly, and then kind of an go back to the sponsor and get kind of an sell sponsor with the savings that you made. Third, make it simple, make it explainable. As I said earlier, I myself starting from a coding background, but I've seen over the time, I realized making data science simple and explainable to business helps you to be successful. And these are the three things I would also say successful organization, the leaders do.
Okay. No, I think this is the very important one. The last one, especially, that eventually, if all your data science, AI models and all, they come up with something, which you can claim to be accurate, but you can't explain, right? You don't know how these were arrived at. I think that would not generate a lot of trust, right?
Indeed.
And explainability is a completely different area in AI, which is this
Absolutely.
debate
Yes.
and articles around it.
Yeah.
And in terms of like how to really decipher what AI has recommended,
Explainable.
and I think even from a regulation and
Yep.
from a
Absolutely.
policy point of view, also those are important. But I think that discussion is for a different day, so I won't bring in that discussion today. But meanwhile, let me pick up a question from Imran. So Imran asks that, hello Neel, what are your views on data literacy among business users and how you have addressed it? And I think, yeah, this is where your latest role. What are you doing about it in Mondelēz?
Well, every business has its own focus. So, there is a concept of citizen data scientist. Certain organizations want, and as the General Electric CEO famously told, every organization in the business of data. So that's certain philosophy organization. But there are organizations as well where they say, let business do what they want to do. Your job is to enrich and kind of an enable business. So data literacy is an interesting point. I remember I worked with one of those optical fiber companies. Is based in India and was a second largest or third largest optical fiber producer. I worked in their factories, and I realized that when in the factory there are certain things that are automatically read from the system, or instruments readings are available. There are certain inputs that need to be keyed in, especially in the QC or a quality control or a quality assurance environment. Now there is so much of repetition of the same information. The same information is asked 10 times. So what happens, the data fatigue happens. So the guy who's putting in, who is possibly an engineer or a scientist in a lab, he completely he completely get fatigued but because feeding in the same thing 10 times. So data literacy is extremely important, and the best way to give data literacy or to encourage data literacy is giving the benefits of data to the user. So if I am the users, I am getting benefit, I will be making sure that my data is correct because I know what it means.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a very, very powerful point that, when you're doing this, data audit, or like, when you're tracing that, where this data is coming from. And if you're going to be increasing their work in terms of asking for like, let's say modifying your process to collect more data, etc., they are going to always ask that question, why? Why should I be feeding all this data? So one is communication, that, you have to give them a bigger picture that, okay, hey, how this additional data is going to benefit us, right? And the second important thing is like, to always keep that in mind, to go and feedback the power of that data, because you told them in the beginning that, this additional data will help you
Yeah.
or help us, and go back and, and show them that difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let us now move to the last part of our, session, which is, the fun and exciting part of it, which is rapid fire. So, Neel, you told me an example of great leadership with fellow CIO who was earlier a guest on ClarITea Chat. So, tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was talking about how at an early days of 12 years before in an India business environment, one of your fellow CIOs encouraged us.
Take his name. It's a good story, so you can take the name.
Yeah, he's Arun Gupta. Yeah, so I was presenting to one of the retailers, India's one of those best and possibly one of those advanced retailers at that time and even today, and we were supposed to present half an hour. What we were presently doing, I got some data from them, doing a pilot and giving them insights. I still remember he has this chief marketing officer, he himself, and all that top management, and they spend 2 hours on a half an hour schedule meeting, and that gave me an immense satisfaction. And I do know that they passed on nice words about me to my management later on. And in fact, Arun gave me a nice LinkedIn feedback, even me without asking for it. So that shows that in terms, I was I was kind of humbled, but at the same time I realized these guys really see the importance of data and data science and what it can bring. So otherwise, top executives will not spend 2 hours, and that was a good experience in the early part of my career.
Awesome. And I think this is a good quality of good leaders, that, when somebody has made a difference. So you were coming from sales, and looks like that, you were able to wow them with your presentation. You were able to grab their attention. You were able to make a case for, for data driven insights. And I think he was humble enough to, like, even though you're coming from a supplier side, to basically go to LinkedIn and give you a recommendation.
Still there.
And
Yeah.
that's Arun Gupta for you. And
Yeah.
I remember in his ClarITea Chat, he had given a very, very powerful message, which was that, people only remember how you made them feel. Okay.
Mm.
And now, fast forward, I think almost 40, 35, 40 chats forward, I'm talking to Neel, and Neel still remembers how Arun made him feel.
That's right.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. So again, Neel, another one. People come from different backgrounds, and people come from humble backgrounds. Even I come from one of those, where my father had to take loans for our studies. Okay. And built his house, way late into his 50s, because the first priority was our studies. So, what's your message to the people who come from humble backgrounds?
Well, I think I mean, not a message is a big word. I mean, I can share my experience, saying wherever you are from, have faith on what you are doing and show the passion. As I said, many a times, I still remember, I'm not bragging about myself, I still remember doing a pilot single-handedly, um, even in the weekends. And I had 4 laptops. That was time we didn't have cloud, so we have 4 big laptops, and I used to take my chair from one end to the other end. What it only demonstrates that you need to be a bit passionate about what you're doing, and don't lose hope. I mean, it doesn't matter where you start; it matters where you end.
Yeah, and don't look at success per se. Look at the hard work that goes into creating success. Yeah.
Absolutely, is the passion. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay. Okay, so that brings us to the last and last part of it, Neel. So I've been, like, putting you on the spot, asking you so many questions, and now it's your turn to put me on the spot and take your revenge. Ask me a question. What's your reverse question to me?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity. If I have an opportunity to ask you, I would say, I mean, you have been CIOs of more than one organizations, and then I see you being an entrepreneur. So what was the drive?
Sorry, what was the?
What was the drive behind it? What made you an entrepreneur?
Oh, okay.
Your own business.
So this question has been asked many times. So let me
Oh,
give a different twist to it. So see, entrepreneur for me is more of a mindset, right? It's a mindset of it has got many elements of it, and I have been using the same mindset, in my corporate career also. So one of them is being fearless, right? So we are always looking behind our back, to our bosses, to our peers, to the chatter that happens around, and we are always trying to conform to a certain model, right, of a professional. I've been actually quite outrageous at multiple times, where I've said things that people laughed at, okay, and then we made it happen afterwards, okay. Outrageous ideas, but hardcore value into those. So yeah, at sort of late 40s, coming out and starting my own venture was something like that. People laughed at it, but yeah, it's if it makes sense, why not do it? I think the other part of the entrepreneur mindset is always not really get falling into a comfort zone. So I when I came out, I had offers, pretty lucrative offers at that. But then when I looked at the work content of that, I was like, oh my god, I have to start from the cleanup again. What I did in my first CIO role. I mean, first 2-3 years was a massive amount of cleanup, into setting up the systems and processes, modernizing stuff, setting up the structures, operating models, and something which basically then runs clockwork while we work on the transformation. But I also realized that people are not going to have that patience for that cleanup, and therefore I don't want to do a Bollywood set of digital transformation, which a lot of people end up doing. You know how these Bollywood sets are made, right? I mean, you open the door and there's like bushes behind.
I have been in Mumbai for a few years.
So you know that, right? So that's the next one, which is basically being true to what you're doing, and what that means is starting from the fundamentals, okay, and not just doing it just I have to do a tick mark and I do it. So whatever job I have done, I have gone right into the fundamental sustainability of my work. That if I do it today, when I move on, is it going to sustain 10 years beyond, right? And I think if you bring that approach to whatever you're building, even whether you're in an organization or whether you are on your own, again, that's I would call it as an entrepreneur mindset. And I think the last one I would say is that experimentation and learning. So whatever I'm doing has been an experiment and has been a learning, uh, and a continuous improvisation, whether it's ClarITea Chat or whether it's my LinkedIn presence or whether I mean, as a corporate executive, you're never a good writer. I just learned writing all the way.
Yeah,
And,
it's the
yeah,
mindset,
so
right?
yeah, so I think those are the traits that I always had. And when I saw that, okay, what is this going to require to be an entrepreneur? Just many different things from a skills and other stuff point of view. Like I have learned taxation
Yeah,
firsthand,
yeah,
which
yeah.
would lead to my finance department.
Yeah.
So some of those things. But I think fundamentally that I realized that even in all my corporate jobs, I had been sort of what they call as intrapreneur.
Mm,
Okay, and as you
entrepreneur.
come out
Yeah.
and become an entrepreneur, probably some of those things are going to help me and going to sustain me. So
Yeah.
that's how I am.
So
That's
it's
where I am.
it's about
But
the mindset, right? And yeah, no, of course. And I
yeah,
think if I may say
right.
so, you are a more complete man if I hear you and understand that from a professional perspective. You understand how different business functions work today, including tax.
No, yeah, absolutely. So, and a lot of it is learning. Learning has nothing to do with age. So,
Of
I
course.
still learn. I learn every day. In fact, for the audience, I just want to share a small snippet that, once we end the chat and, we go offline, we are going to kind of group together as a team and try to gather some learnings of what could we have done better in this ClarITea Chat. And, just one such improvisation in each of the episodes, and we have 40 plus improvisations happening so far. That's like the continuous improvement for you, and that's part of the entrepreneur mindset.
Yeah.
On that note, thank you, Neel, for attending this on a Saturday morning, a Saturday spring morning in the UK. And thank you for all the audience for engaging and for asking your questions, for making your presence felt with your raised hands. And I must say that thank you all of those who are watching the recorded version. We know we come online on a Saturday afternoon when you're taking a nap, so a lot of people catch up on it before Sunday morning, and we see at least 500 people watching this, before the end of the week. So thank you all of you who are watching the recording. And before I leave, again, this is an auspicious day, and somehow it has so happened that the Christmas day was a Saturday, and we had a ClarITea Chat on that day, a Christmas edition in red t-shirts. 1st of January was a Saturday, and we had a ClarITea Chat on that with an author and a CEO. And we have Gudi Padwa here, the Indian New Year Day, and it's a Saturday, and we again have a Gudi Padwa edition with somebody in the UK, okay, in 2-degree centigrade.
in an April morning. Yeah, I mean that's ridiculous. That's the climate change. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. I think most of the credits should go to your audience, and I could see in a Saturday evening your audience would have alternatives to go to and spend time, but I see there with you, and that shows a lot about your chat and your popularity. So keep it up.
No, thanks, Neel. And I think, the whole point of ClarITea Chat is to have honest, frank conversations around the topics of finding success with technology. And, and these conversations are really enriching for me as well. So thank you, everyone. Wishing you all a happy New Year, happy Gudi Padwa. And there are multiple names to it, in different parts of the country. So wherever you are, our best wishes to you for great beginnings in this new year. It also is the new financial year in India, which started yesterday. So I hope, you have great business results and great additions of value with your own technology initiatives. On that note, please have a great weekend, have a great family time, and see you next Saturday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.